the impossible discovery. The survey ship Eternal Vigilance drifted through the void at the edge of what the galactic hegemony designated as Sector 947b, a backwater region of space that held little interest for most civilized species. Commander Zixatheta adjusted her 4 optical sensors, focusing on the readings that couldn't possibly be correct. Her chitinous exoskeleton clicked nervously as she recalibrated the instruments for the 3rd time. The young star system before them should have been unremarkable. Initial long-range scans had shown a typical yellow dwarf star with 9 planets, nothing that would warrant attention from the hegemony's vast bureaucracy. But something was wrong with the energy signatures emanating from the 3rd planet. They were impossible. Lieutenant Krath, run another diagnostic on our sensors, Zixatheta commanded, her mandibles clicking in frustration. These readings suggest this primitive world is generating more energy than a Class 7 civilization. Yet we detect no Dyson structures, no orbital platforms, no visible infrastructure at all. Lieutenant Krath, a gelatinous being from the methane worlds of Proxima, rippled in acknowledgement. His form shifted colors as he interfaced directly with the ship's systems, his consciousness merging temporarily with the computer's quantum processors. After several moments, he solidified slightly, a sign of concern among his species. Commander, the sensors are functioning perfectly. The readings are accurate. That planet is somehow generating and controlling energies that shouldn't exist in normal spacetime. The signatures are unlike anything in our database. They appear to be manipulating fundamental forces at the quantum level, but without any detectable machinery. Zixatheta felt her secondary hearts begin to pump faster, a stress response her species had evolved over millions of years. The galactic hegemony had ruled for 30,000 years, cataloging every form of technology, every possible advancement path a species could take. There were no surprises left in the galaxy, or so they had believed. Send a priority message to Hegemony Command. Tell them we found something that requires immediate investigation. And prepare a shuttle. We're going down there. The planet Earth hung before them like a blue jewel, deceptively peaceful. As their shuttle descended through the atmosphere, the crew expected to find hidden cities, camouflaged installations, something to explain the impossible energy readings. Instead, they found cities that looked almost primitive by galactic standards. Buildings of steel and glass, vehicles that still rolled on wheels, humans walking on streets rather than teleporting. The shuttle landed in a designated area outside what the humans called the United Nations building in New York City. A small delegation of humans waited for them, dressed in simple fabric clothing that wouldn't have looked out of place on a dozen pre-spaceflight worlds. Leading them was a middle-aged human male with dark skin and graying hair at his temples. "Welcome to Earth," the man said in perfect hegemony standard, though no translation device was visible. "I'm Marcus Rivera, Secretary General of the United Earth Council. We've been expecting you." Zixatheta's translator struggled for a moment. "Expecting us? We made no announcement of our arrival. We've been running silent to avoid cultural contamination protocols." Marcus smiled, an expression that Zixatheta had learned meant amusement or friendliness among many bipedal species. "Commander Zixatheta, your ship has been in our system for 14 minutes and 37 seconds. That's more than enough time for us to notice and prepare. Would you like some coffee? I understand your species can process caffeine safely." The casual revelation that they had been detected despite using the hegemony's most advanced stealth technology sent ripples of unease through the alien delegation. Krath's form became more translucent, a sign of extreme anxiety. "How?" was all Zixatheta could manage. Marcus gestured for them to follow him into the building. As they walked, he spoke casually as if discussing the weather. "Every human mind is connected to what we call the conscious field. It's a quantum neural network that emerged about 50 years ago, when we discovered that consciousness itself could manipulate quantum states. We don't need machines to detect things anymore. We simply know." The conference room they entered looked mundane enough with a wooden table and comfortable chairs, but Zixatheta's enhanced senses detected something else, an energy field that seemed to pulse with life itself. Marcus sat down and gestured for them to do the same. "I imagine you're confused by our energy signatures," he continued. "You're probably wondering where our generators are, our fusion reactors, our antimatter plants. The truth is, we don't need them anymore. Every human is a living conduit for zero-point energy. We tap directly into the quantum vacuum through conscious intent. Lieutenant Krath finally found his voice, though it warbled with disbelief. That's impossible. The energy requirements alone would destroy any biological neural network. The heat dissipation would cook your brains in microseconds. A young human woman entered the room carrying a tray of beverages. She looked no older than 20 Earth years, with bright eyes and a cheerful demeanor. That's what we thought too at first, she said, setting down the tray. But consciousness doesn't follow the same rules as regular matter. When you're manipulating reality at the quantum level through pure thought, thermodynamics becomes more of a suggestion than a law. To demonstrate, she held out her hand. Palm up. The air above it shimmered, and suddenly a perfect sphere of light appeared, rotating slowly. It wasn't just light, though. Zixa Theta's instruments detected gravitational fluctuations, temporal distortions, and energy patterns that suggested the girl was literally creating a miniature star through thought alone. "This is my daughter, Elena," Marcus said proudly. "She's studying to be what we call a reality architect. Her graduation project is to design a new constellation visible from Earth. The stars won't be real in the traditional sense, but they'll be stable light constructs that will last for millennia." Zix Theta's mind reeled. The implications were staggering. If every human possessed such abilities, they weren't just the advanced species, they were something else entirely. Something the galaxy had never encountered. "How many humans have these abilities?" she asked, though she feared the answer. "All of us," Marcus replied simply. 8 billion reality benders, though most people just use it for everyday convenience. Making coffee stay the perfect temperature, ensuring they never lose their keys. Small things. Only a few pursue the deeper applications. We call them thought crafting, reality weaving, consciousness sculpting. We're still discovering what's possible. Elena let the miniature star fade and smiled at the shocked aliens. "Would you like me to show you something really cool? I can create a pocket dimension where time flows differently. We use them for studying. You can experience a year of education in what feels like a day. It's how I learned 17 languages last month." Krath's form was now shifting through colors so rapidly, it was hard to look at him directly. "This is impossible. The hegemony has studied consciousness for millennia. It's an emergent property of complex neural networks, nothing more. It can't manipulate physical reality." Marcus stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city beyond. "That's what we thought too. But 50 years ago, a researcher named Dr. Sarah Chen made a discovery. Consciousness isn't produced by the brain, it's channeled by it. The brain is more like an antenna than a generator, and like any antenna, it can be tuned. Once we learned how to tune human consciousness to interact with quantum fields directly, everything changed." He turned back to them, and for the first time, Zixa Theta saw something in his eyes that made her step back. It wasn't threatening, but it was vast, as if she were looking into an intelligence that existed on multiple levels of reality simultaneously. The question now, "Commander, is what the galactic hegemony intends to do with this information. We're not naive. We know that throughout history, when a more advanced civilization encounters a less advanced one, it rarely ends well for the latter. Except in this case, I'm not entirely certain which of us is more advanced." Zixa Theta's communication implant buzzed. Hegemony Command was requesting an immediate report. She looked at the humans, at young Elena, who could create stars with her thoughts, at Marcus, whose consciousness seemed to exist in multiple dimensions, and realized that nothing would ever be the same again. "I need to report to my superiors," she said carefully. "They'll want to send a full diplomatic team, possibly a fleet." Marcus nodded understandingly. "Of course, but Commander, before you do, there's something else you should know. We're not the only ones. We've detected similar consciousness evolution beginning on 14 other worlds. It seems to be a natural step in the development of intelligent species. The question isn't whether the galaxy is ready for humanity. It's whether the galactic hegemony is ready for what's coming next." The paradigm shift. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Hegemony had never seen such chaos. Representatives from 800 worlds filled the vast spherical chamber that floated in interdimensional space, their voices creating a cacophony of sounds that the universal translators struggled to process. At the center of it all, projected in holographic perfection, stood the image of Commander Zixa Theta delivering her report. Supreme Orchestrator Valeth, an ancient being whose crystalline form had governed the hegemony for 3 millennia, raised a appendage for silence. The chamber gradually quieted, though the underlying tension remained palpable. When Valeth spoke, its voice resonated through multiple dimensions, a reminder of why the crystalline ones had ruled for so long. "The evidence is undeniable," Valeth intoned. "The humans have achieved something our greatest scientists deemed impossible. They have breached the barrier between consciousness and physical reality. The question before us is not whether this is true, but how we respond." Admiral Grux of View, the warrior caste, stood, his massive frame casting shadows across several smaller delegates. "The response is obvious. This power is too dangerous to exist outside hegemony control. We must act before they become a threat. A preemptive strike while they're still confined to one world." Murmurs of agreement rippled through certain sections of the assembly, but they were met with equal dissent from others. Scholar Meridian, a gaseous entity from the knowledge worlds, swirled in agitation. "You would attack beings who can manipulate reality with thought? Have you considered that our weapons might simply cease to exist if they will it? That our fleets might find themselves in alternate dimensions? We don't understand the limits of their abilities." The debate raged for hours, growing increasingly heated. Some called for immediate military action, others for containment, still others for attempting to steal or replicate the human advancement. It was into this chaos that Marcus Rivera materialized. He didn't arrive by ship or transporter. One moment the space at the center of the chamber was empty, and the next, he stood there in his simple Earth suit, as solid and real as any being present. The security systems hadn't triggered, the dimensional barriers hadn't been breached. He had simply thought himself there, and reality had obliged. The chamber fell silent. "Apologies for the dramatic entrance," Marcus said, his voice somehow reaching every being present without amplification. "But I felt it was important to demonstrate that your discussions about containing or controlling humanity are somewhat moot. We exist where we choose to exist." Supreme Orchestrator Valeth recovered first, its crystalline structure resonating with what might have been admiration or fear. "Marcus Rivera of Earth, you were not invited to this assembly." "No," Marcus agreed pleasantly. "But then again, this assembly is discussing the fate of my species without our input. That seemed impolite. I'm here to offer an alternative to the various aggressive proposals being considered." Admiral Grux reached for his weapon, a gesture more reflexive than practical. The weapon simply wasn't there anymore. Marcus hadn't taken it, hadn't destroyed it. It had simply been edited out of existence, at least temporarily. "Please, Admiral, let's keep this civil," Marcus said. "Your weapon will return when you leave this chamber. I'm not here to threaten anyone. I'm here to offer a gift." He gestured, and the space around them changed. They were no longer in the assembly hall, but floating in a vast cosmos of light and energy. Galaxies swirled around them, but not galaxies as they knew them. These were galaxies of pure thought, where ideas had mass and dreams generated gravity. "This is the conscious realm," Marcus explained as beings around him gasped, chirped, or expressed shock in their various ways. "It exists parallel to physical space, the substrate upon which reality is built. Humans have learned to access it, to swim in it, to shape it. But we've discovered something remarkable. Every sentient species has the potential to do the same." The vision shifted, showing worlds throughout the galaxy. On each, Marcus showed the spark of consciousness evolution beginning, waiting to be nurtured or suppressed. "The hegemony has a choice," he continued. "You can try to fight this change, to suppress it, to maintain the old order. You'll fail, of course, not because humanity will stop you, but because evolution doesn't move backward. Or you can embrace it. We can teach you." Scholar Meridian pulsed with excitement. "You would share this knowledge?" "Freely and completely," Marcus confirmed. "But understand what that means. Your society is built on hierarchies of technology, on scarcity, on the ability to control resources and information. When every being can manipulate reality through conscious intent, those structures become obsolete. There will be no more need for starships when beings can think themselves across the galaxy. No more energy crises when everyone can tap into zero-point energy. No more wars over resources when resources can be created from quantum foam. The vision faded, and they were back in the assembly hall. But something had changed. Every being present had felt the touch of the conscious realm, had glimpsed the potential within themselves. Supreme Orchestrator Valeth's form shifted through patterns of deep thought. You're not offering to elevate us. You're offering to fundamentally transform the nature of galactic civilization. Yes, Marcus said simply. The age of material technology is ending. The age of consciousness technology is beginning. The question is whether the hegemony will lead that transformation or be left behind by it. A young hegemony citizen, barely past adolescence by her species standards, stood up in the visitors section. She was Tyranny, a race known for their rigid adherence to logic and order. I want to learn, she said, her voice carrying surprising strength. I want to touch stars with my thoughts. Others began standing, young and old, from species across the spectrum of galactic civilization. The desire, once awakened, was proving impossible to suppress. Admiral Grux's warrior's pride warred with the new understanding growing in his mind. If everyone has such power, how do you maintain order? How do you prevent chaos? Elena Rivera appeared beside her father, having thought herself into existence at the assembly just as he had. We don't prevent chaos, Admiral. We dance with it. When everyone can shape reality, cooperation becomes essential. If I create something that interferes with someone else's creation, we both suffer. We've learned to harmonize our intentions, to create together rather than in opposition. It's not perfect, we still have disagreements, but they're resolved through conscious negotiation, not force. She demonstrated by creating a small garden in the middle of the assembly floor, complete with flowers that sang in harmonious frequencies. Then she invited others to add to it. Tentatively, those who had been touched by the conscious realm began to contribute. A delegate added water features, another added bioluminescent plants from their homeworld's imagination. Yet another created small creatures of living light that danced among the flora. Within minutes, the sterile assembly hall had become a work of collaborative art, each addition complementing the others in ways that would have required years of planning to achieve through conventional means. Supreme Orchestrator Valeth watched the transformation with what could only be described as wonder. 3 millennia of rigid governance, of maintaining order through control and hierarchy, and here was a different way entirely. Not chaos, but structured creativity. Not anarchy, but conscious collaboration. How long would it take, Valeth asked, to teach this to all our species? Marcus smiled. That depends on how ready you are to let go of the old ways. Some species will adapt quickly, others will need more time. But I'd estimate within a standard galactic year, every world that chooses to could have at least basic consciousness manipulation abilities. Within 5 years, you wouldn't recognize galactic civilization. The vote, when it came, was closer than anyone had predicted. But in the end, the prospect of transcendence outweighed the comfort of the familiar. The galactic hegemony voted to accept humanity's offer, to begin the transformation that would remake 800 worlds. As the assembly dispersed, beings talking excitedly about the future or worriedly about what they were leaving behind, Commander Zixa Theta approached Marcus. You knew this would happen, she said. From the moment we detected Earth, you knew how this would unfold. Marcus nodded. We've been watching the galaxy for decades through the conscious realm. We knew that eventually someone would find us, and we'd have to make this choice. Share what we've learned or become either conquerors or conquered. We chose sharing. It's scarier in some ways, we're giving up any advantage we might have had. But it's the only path that leads to something greater than what any of us could achieve alone. Elena created a small star in her palm and offered it to Zixa Theta. A gift, Commander. The first star created by human thought given to the being who opened the door between our civilizations. Zixa Theta took it carefully, feeling its warmth, its impossibility, its promise. What happens now? Now, Marcus said, looking out at the stars beyond the assembly hall. We all learned to dream bigger than we ever thought possible. The universe is about to become a much more interesting place. Epilogue. 1 year later, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The shipping lanes that had connected worlds for millennia were empty, replaced by thoughts that moved faster than light. The great shipyards of Proxima fell silent, their workers now crafting realities instead of vessels. The energy consortiums that had powered civilizations dissolved, their services no longer needed when every being could tap into infinite energy. On Earth, Elena Rivera stood with Commander Zix Theta, who had become humanity's first non-human student of reality architecture. Together, they were working on their masterpiece, a shared creation that would be visible from every world in the galaxy. Not a constellation, but something greater. A bridge of light and thought that would connect every conscious being who wished it, allowing instant communication and understanding across species barriers that had existed since the dawn of civilization. "Are you ready?" Elena asked. Zix Theta's mandibles clicked, and what she had learned was her species' equivalent of a smile. "I never thought I'd help build something from pure consciousness. My people were engineers of matter. Now we're becoming engineers of possibility itself." Together, human and alien, they reached out with their thoughts and began to weave reality into something new. Across the galaxy, billions of minds felt the invitation and joined in, each adding their own thread to the tapestry. The galactic hegemony was dead. In its place, something unprecedented was being born. Not an empire, not a federation, but a conscious collective where every being retained their individuality while contributing to a greater whole. It wasn't perfect. There were still conflicts, still those who resisted the change, still problems to solve. But for the first time in galactic history, the future was truly unlimited. The impossible had become commonplace, the unimaginable had become reality, and consciousness itself had become the final frontier. The universe would never be the same again.